It'd be great if I unmuted my microphone. That would certainly help. So, what I'm going to go through today is going to talk through some of the impact from the rotation for cards. For those of you who maybe haven't been in the loop or haven't been paying too close attention, there was actually a pretty big change in the way that they're doing it. I feel like it's worth going through and talking through not only what the impact that is from a perspective of how does it impact the card pool, but also a perspective of what does that even mean from a game design perspective and like how to interpret this as players of the game. So, first off, just kind of going through the changes here because there has been a decent amount of I feel like I still see people in Discord getting it wrong what this actually means and how it's going to work. So I just wanted to go through this real quick to make sure all on the same page, right? So first off, there is a evergreen set. So if you're completely unfamiliar with card games, evergreen are cards that do not ever rotate out. Evergreen cards are in the game forever. That doesn't mean that they're not susceptible to potentially balance changes, but it does mean that they are there for the long haul. They do not move from being in the game, right? Right now, the Evergreen set is about 170 cards. So it's the cards that you get for the like basic beginner sets, and then the sets that you get at level 12, I believe it is, for each nation, are the cards that are considered evergreen. Those cards currently are the ones that don't leave the game, right? So that set is going to be expanding. So rather than the 170 cards that just come in those couple packs that you get when you start the game, and then when you hit that particular level with each nation, it's going to be expanding to 400 cards, and those 400 cards are not just those original 170. Those extra ones are coming from kind of a mishmash of sets that have been released across cards history. So this does include cards that were from like some of the most recent expansion. So there's not like a time period that they're looking at. It is just, hey, which cards that exist in the game today are the ones that we want to keep around forever, right? We want to always have these cards be available for players to use. Okay, so now that we've got the evergreen set established, so those 400 cards that never leave, right? We're still having sets in the game. And as far as I can tell, the actual set release cycle stays the same, where there's going to be like two big sets per year. So the thing that will be different is the actual way that rotation works. So previously, if you've been part of the game for a while, you'll know that rotation cards effectively are in the game until they specifically get rotated. And with each expansion, there were cards that would be subject to rotation. It was irrespective of what set they came in with, except for the caveat that like cards that were released within sets, I think, could not be rotated for a period of time. I think it was 18 months. But after that, anything could have been rotated with any set that was upcoming, or they could have just stayed in the game forever, right? There was no rhyme or reason necessarily as to what got rotated. So, understandably, I can see why this is changing because that is a lot of work to need to manage, right? Because you need to come in to every set, not only designing the new cards for the new set that you're making and releasing, but also go in with the mindset of, okay, what are we now going to take out of standard and rotate out because not like a net there's not like a process that you're following where, oh, this is getting released on this particular date um, for whatever reason. So that's what's changing. So basically, what'll happen is sets now rotate during the winter expansion 2 years after they get released. So, for example, the 2024 sets were Covert Operations and Blood and Iron. Those sets are going to stay in the game right now. We got the summer expansion coming up. The what is it? Anzac expansion, basically, is what I'm going to call it. I know that's not the name of it, but that's the big thing, right? So Covert Operations and Blood and Iron will still be in the game when the summer expansion drops in June or whenever it is. So we'll have 5 sets in standard, right? We'll have Covert Ops, Blood and Iron, Naval Warfare, Homefront, and then the Anzac expansion. When the winter expansion drops later this year, whenever that happens, what is it, like October, November? Whenever it happens to be, right? That's when Covert Operations and Blood and Iron will drop. So at that point, we would have 4 sets in standard. So Naval Warfare, Homefront, the Anzac expansion, and then whatever the winter expansion ends up being. So that means that in standard, at any point, we'll have between 4 and 5 sets, right? So interestingly, they are going to continue doing rotations of older cards into expansions. So right now, the way that rotation has previously worked is that with each set that came out, there would be about 20 cards that would rotate in from older sets that had been on the reserve list. That's still going to happen. But now when those cards from the reserve list rotate in, they will be rotated in and considered basically part of that set. So, like, the cards that rotate in for the winter expansion, those will be tied to the winter 2026 expansion, right? So then when we get to 2 years after, so when we get to the winter expansion of 2028, those cards that rotated in as part of the 2026 winter expansion rotate back out again. So hopefully this makes it a lot easier and a lot faster for 1939. There's still going to be obviously a lot of effort that goes in of like, okay, what cards do we rotate in from this reserve pool? But now that there's a very standardized process about how this works, it's here's all the cards that are leaving, absolutely guaranteed. You can plan for it, you know, in advance. Like, there's not a lot of thought that goes into it. It's very structured and very standardized. So what does this mean for the actual available card pool that we have? So sets introduce about 130 cards. So this is obviously average-ish ballpark. Take it with a grain of salt. But on average, you have 87 cards that come in as part of an expansion set, the big ones, right? You get 20 cards that rotate in from the reserve pool. And then the mini sets will be tied to whatever the most recent big expansion was. So Early War is going to be tied to Homefront, right? And mini sets are usually a couple dozen cards. So in total, a set is about 130 cards between those 3 things. The new cards coming in, the reserve cards that are rotating in, and the mini set that gets released, you know, a couple months later that gets tied to it. So, like I said before, we'll have 4 to 5 sets that are active at any one time. So with... Sorry, one second. So with that in mind, what that means for our library size is that we'd have the 400 evergreen cards, the ones that do not ever leave the available lists. And then we have 4 to 5 active sets at any given time, and each set is about 130 cards, which means the sets are introducing about 520 to 650 cards into our card pool, which means that our card pool will be basically between 900 and 1,000 cards at any given time. To compare that to today, we have 170 evergreen cards today and an 884 total available card pool. So the card pool will be a little bit bigger, but the evergreen cards will be significantly larger in their representation, right? So this means that the game is going to transition from about 19% of the card pool being evergreen to like double that, right? Like it'll be 40-ish% depending on which, you know, where we're at in the set rotation cycle. But ballpark, we're effectively doubling the number of cards that are in the library for us that are evergreen cards that never go away. So what this means is that the evergreen cards that are introduced here are going to have a greater impact and a greater visibility because they're just naturally a higher percentage of cards that are part of the active card pool. Hey there, Bear. So what does this mean actually? So what the current evergreen representation looks like, just to give an idea, so for that 170 cards, that is the current evergreen set, like what does that look like when it comes to, you know, the high-end gameplay in the cards ecosystem? So looking at the most recent expansion tournament, I went through and looked at, hey, what cards are in the evergreen set that are currently being represented by nations within the game, right? I only looked at the majors. I didn't bother looking at minors, but regardless, this hopefully gives a good idea of what cards we currently see. So Britain's kind of the odd guy out because at obviously there was buffs still being insane, and none of those cards are in the Evergreen set. So the only card that shows up there is Convoy. US interestingly has the largest amount of Evergreen representation in decks today at the competitive tier. So for Freedom War Machine, we can do it War Bond, Strategic Bombing, Unity, and I think there was one deck that included the P51. Um, not the not the 2/2 draw cards, but the one that deals damage to air units when it comes in. Japan, a lot of the aggro cards are part of, or excuse me, the cards that are very, very commonly seen on aggro lists that were part of the Evergreen set, 15th Cav expansion, 33rd Recon, Type 93, and second rating. Germany, kind of similar, 35T, Blitzkrieg, Enigma, Panzer 2A. And Soviets are a bit weird because they were a little underrepresented, but the decks that did exist used Sickle, the T-34 1942, and 845th rifles. So that's where we're at today with the representation of Evergreen in the current tournament formats, where Evergreen is, this kind of smaller a percentage of the card pool. Um, just something to think about as we're moving forward. So what does a card in Evergreen, what does it look like? What is a good Evergreen card? So this is obviously an asterisk. These are all my opinions, but I think this is fairly reasonable. So for staples, so things that are common and uncommon cards, generally Evergreen cards are the cards that new players are going to see first, and they're first things that they're going to experience in the game, and the most cards that they're going to have in their decks when they start are going to be commons and uncommons, right? Because that's just naturally what they're going to have the most of. They're not going to have a lot of specials. They might not have any elites. So like these are the things where you don't necessarily want to overcomplicate these. But they should emphasize the difference between nations. So even within the Evergreen set itself, looking at just the common and uncommon cards, you should be able to get an understanding of, okay, how do different nations play? So I think some examples here that I pulled out, that again, these are the ones that see even current tournament representation out of the Evergreen set, are good examples of cards that sort of differentiate the nations in their playstyle. Britain has the most accessibility to pretty straightforward card draw with Convoy. It is just pay 2, draw 3. Every other nation with card draw has to have some sort of thing that they are meeting in order to hit that drawing amount, right? So for instance, US with the Sherman, like you have to control the front line. Japan with expansion, you have to control the front line. Like these are the kinds of things where it's like people can look at those cards and say, okay, well, these nations have like specific things that you have to meet in order to be able to draw cards. And Britain has this card that just says, you just draw 2. Great. Cool. You understand that Britain versus everyone else is maybe the nation that naturally has easier access to card draw. The Soviet Union with Sickle, very straightforward, very understandable card. You ping a unit, you ping your HQ, you draw a card. Almost instantly, like, hey, this card is very straightforward, it's very easy to understand, and you don't see like HQ damage in any other nation. So it's like, okay, maybe self damage is a thing that the Soviet Union nation is built around. Like that's an emphasis for that country. War bonds, and I guess War Machine as well for the US. It's like, hey, this is very straightforward and very clear that it's like the US is the nation that ramps. You get more credits, you play bigger stuff, you just outscale your opponent. And that's something that even for people who maybe don't have much in the way of like previous card game experience is easy to understand, right? You have more resources to spend on future turns at the expense of paying resources now and not really getting anything out of it on the turn that you're playing it. Okay, so for these, simple, straightforward, staple cards, they should fit in most decks, especially intro levels of play. because they are straightforward, because they are simple. They are cards that you could theoretically include at basically any deck level. So this one is maybe less applicable here just because it's like, hey, these cards are pretty straightforward. The examples that I have here, but I'm thinking about stuff that is like, you probably want to avoid staple evergreen cards that are just tech cards. So cards that only counter a specific deck in the future is maybe something you might want to avoid, because if this is the first thing that you're opening up, like, you don't want to get a card where you're like, well, this doesn't seem useful, right? Like, this is a card that seems very specific, and it's maybe not a great experience for someone who's coming in, who is getting evergreen cards. Um, I think for staples, these should be cards that should be seen as fair. So you're not going to see people who complain about staple, simple, evergreen cards that basically across the board, it's like, these shouldn't be the cards that you look at and you say and think to yourself, this is the reason that I lost the game. I think there are maybe a couple where there is some frustration with cards that would be introduced potentially in an evergreen set, where, hey, because these can't rotate out, they are here for good, and I'll talk about those in the future. But at least for right now, like, think about the idea of, hey, War Machine and War Bonds are cards that will never leave, right? The US will always have those available to do ramp. You can't get ramp out of the game now. Like, those are cards that will always be here, right? So ramp will always be a deck archetype that is sitting there for someone to play with. And this last bullet point, I think, is something that's going to be maybe more controversial, but this one, again, my opinions. I believe that staple evergreen cards need to leave room to be power crept. And what I mean by that is that since these are the cards that literally can't leave the game, they are always here, they will always be around, what you want is, in sets, ideally those sets have cards that either act as side grades or potentially upgrades to the cards that are in that sort of staple set. And I think the easiest example is something like Land Girls, right? Where it's a 2-cost draw 2 bonded card. Now, from a cost perspective, hey, this is a straight upgrade from Convoy 175, right? And that is how we've seen it played in a tournament setting. But I think that is actually good game design. And the reason I say that is that if Convoy, sticking with a very straightforward example, right? If Convoy gave absolutely no room to potentially be power crept in any way, right, for a draw 2, that kind of limits your ability to introduce things in the future. But it has the added impact that if you have a card that comes in that is a power crept version of your evergreen set, you basically leave the ability for that to then, like, that might be healthy within the game. But you know that give it 2 years and this card is going to rotate back out again, and then we'll have this slightly lower power level version that's the evergreen set card that is still there. Spot the experienced MTG player. No comment for that one. How does this compare to things like specials and elites? So currently, the evergreen set only has 2 elite cards per nation. So I think that I'm going to just focus on the elites. Specials are, you start adding those in, it gets a little confusing. So just focusing on the elites, because it's such a small playing space that those are currently working within for the evergreen set. So elites and specials can be more complex because they are so limited in an evergreen format. However, they should still be able to fit into most decks as sort of a standalone card. And the example that I give in here is Front Formation. Front Formation is a very strong is a very strong elite, but I believe that it would be a very bad evergreen elite because it requires you to build a deck around the idea that you have Front Formation, right? Because you basically are forced into that sort of like, okay, I'm going to build a Soviet health gain survivability deck and use Front Formation as the thing that wins me the game, right? I think that would be a bad evergreen elite because it doesn't fit into most decks. And especially as a new player, if you're coming in and most of the cards that you have are going to be these sort of evergreen set cards, you're going to want to be able to experiment with deck building. You want to experiment with all the cards that you have, and you might only have a couple of elites, and that would feel pretty bad if you're like, hey, I want to build a Soviet deck, but literally the only elite that I have is front formation, so I guess I have to build around it. Like, that very much limits your ability to sort of explore the game space, right? Because the number of elites that you have are so limited in the evergreen format, they should be powerful. So as opposed to the staple cards where, hey, these should leave room to be power crept. These are totally fine to be seen as fair cards that, you know, people shouldn't be complaining about. These are cards that, you know, you see a lot, but they're fine, right? Like they're a 3 out of 5, right? I think staples, or excuse me, specials and elites can break that. They can be powerful. Especially since a lot of players, hey, these might be the only elites that they have for a significant amount of time, because it can take time to build things up. So you want to have elites that it's like when these hit the field, boom, they have game impact, you feel it, and you can feel the difference between the staple cards that you have in your deck and the one or two like, hey, these are my elites that I have in this deck that I've constructed. My last bullet point here is that the current evergreen elites, so the 2 that you have for your evergreens, cheat the system a little bit. I'll talk about that in just a second here. So the current evergreen elites list, this is what one of the 2 elites that you have for each nation. So you have a couple that are absolutely bangers, right? They meet all of those requirements. Like Raiding Brigade shows up in every Japan list. It is an outstanding card. It's cheap. It's good removal. It's a blitz infantry. Like it is something where it's like someone, if they're just looking at the stat line, might say, oh, this card seems kind of underpowered, right? Because it's a 3-cost 2/2. Like that seems like really weak. But then they start playing with it, and the ability to just instantly pop a thing on the field is great. Strategic Bombing, absolutely outstanding elite card. It feels super strong when you play it. It's super impactful. It can win you games. And then we start getting into the elites that are like, these are fine. But there's a reason why they don't see competitive play. I think when you play them as a new player, like these are still things that are, hey, these feel good and they're impactful, but they're just not anywhere near the power level of second rating and strategic bombing, right? So you have Panzer 3L, so, you know, it gets the buff, it can kind of act as a finisher, so a big tank to hit your opponent in the face, which, hey, that's fine. Like, it's a very good representation of what, you know, you can potentially build Germany to do. But I don't think it's certainly not as strong a card as the first 2. Kitty Hawk comes in, deals 2 to an enemy ground target. Okay, it's fine. It is unimpact. It certainly emphasizes Britain's, you know, focus on air units, which is cool, but you can take that and compare it to second rating, and they're on completely different scales, right? As far as like power level and feeling. And then the weirdest one is the Soviet one, which is Cossacks, which, I mean, maybe makes more sense now because it technically has 2 combat keywords. So like it's a soup card kind of. But obviously when this list was being created, that wasn't a thing, right? And it's kind of a weird one, like a 3-cost 0-op blitz smokescreen infantry on, I don't know. This is the one that to me is like I don't associate any of the stuff that this card is doing with any of the nature of Soviet decks, except for like the most recent, like, hey, we like combat keywords on decks, but it's like that's a very, very new thing, right? Like that's not how the original the OG Evergreen set was printed. So in my opinion, that one is the biggest miss from both a flavor perspective and then also from like a power perspective. Like I don't rate this card very highly. Interestingly, so stepping back a slide. So the last bullet point here, purely hypothetically, how would you rework any of these? If so, how? That is a good question. I mean, honestly, for the Cossacks one, I think that one just, it seems to be very at odds with itself. In the sense that it's like you have a zero op infantry with blitz, meaning you're gonna use it, right? Like that's the whole point. And you've slapped smokescreen on it for a reason that I really can't understand, right? Because if the whole point is that it's like you're playing this card no matter what, you can operate it, right? Because it's zero op cost. Like, why does it have smokescreen? Like, that just to me doesn't make sense. So that seems like you have put something on there that, for whatever reason, I mean, it seems like it just loses smokescreen immediately, no matter what. Because it's like, I don't know why you would play this and not operate it, right? That seems like you're missing the point of it. Um, Kitty Hawk seems fine. Same question I asked when I joined. Yeah, fair. I mean, I you could put basically any other combat keyword on there, and it's like, cool, great. This suddenly is like awesome, right? Like, it may not make any sense to have heavy armor, but like at least it does something. um, the other two I think are probably okay, but maybe just a little bit overcosted in comparison. I think the effects are fine, but I'm not really sure how you change them without like doing a lot of stuff potentially with the card. Like, maybe you can have Kitty Hawk be a, I don't know, maybe like a one-op cost fighter so that it comes down and it's like, hey, this provides some additional threat. But like, you compare Kitty Hawk versus some of the other, like, especially Britain has really good elites that are fighters, like the, what is it, the Spitfire that comes down and it's like either +2/+2 or Fury. Like, that in comparison is like, okay, you got to deal with this immediately. And obviously, like, RAF Mustang is absolutely bananas, right? So like, that one's kind of in a league of its own. Panzer 3L. I'm not sure. I'm not sure actually on that one. I feel like just the maybe that one is something where I feel like maybe I underrate it just because the sort of combined arms Germany deck hasn't really been a thing since I've been in the game, and this would be a lot more impactful if it's like, hey, if you could make sure that you had a, you know, fighters and infantry and bombers and whatever, like it coming down as like an 8/5 that you swing with, it's like, okay, sure, like that's beefy. Or sorry, couldn't be an 8/5 because it's each non-tank unit type you control. So realistically, it's probably coming down as like a 6/5 in a best case scenario, right? To be fair, Kitty Hawk can bypass guard to end a game for 3K. True. Yeah. I have to think about that one. Anyway, so these are the other elites that are part of the Evergreen set today, and why I say 1939 sort of cheated a little bit. Because the other options that you have are all of the playset of choose one of three random elites. So this is really interesting because I can see why this was done, right? This gives new players who only have a couple of elites, they only have these ones here and these ones, the option to experience elites in gameplay. So, hey, you're a new player, you have no cards. Here's, in the Evergreen set, a way to experience elites that you just do not have any access to be able to try and play with them. I'm going to try and phrase this as kindly as I can. I think this is a good idea in theory. And if this was a game like Slay the Spire, where you have an infinite amount of time to analyze cards that you're looking at, this would be great, right? Like, if you haven't played Slay the Spire, it's like a single player card deck building game, and there are things like Discovery in that game, which basically can do this kind of effect, right? Where it's, hey, you look at 3 cards, you can pick one, and then you have it added to your hand and you can play it now. And in a game like that, where you have an unlimited amount of time to read the cards and analyze them, I think that works okay. In a game like Cards, or any sort of competitive head-to-head game where you are on a timer, I think giving, especially new players, a card that says, here's 3 cards that you have never seen before and you've never played with, pick one and play with it, is kind of a problem, because it is something where it's like, okay, you're a new player, you've never seen these, here's 3 of them, you need to analyze them and figure out what is the best one for the situation that you're in, which maybe it's an easy choice, right? Maybe there's something where it's like, you play this and you get a card and it's like, okay, cool, I have 10 credits to spend and there's a 10 credit card in here. I'm going to click that and play it on the board. Um, but in a lot of cases, you're going to have elites where it's like, elites are potentially very powerful and have very good abilities, but they can be very specialized. So it's like, okay, what does this mean for me? I haven't seen this card before. I haven't had a chance to analyze it. I'm on a timer. I now need to just pick one and play it, I guess, which maybe I'm overemphasizing the like potential stress that would put a new player under, but like I don't feel like that's a great experience. So it does bug me that this is one of the two elites that you had as an option in the Evergreen set originally. I think actually 1939 did a very good job of resolving this with the new Evergreen set and the changes that they were making. So with the updates to the Evergreen set, I think there's a good ability for us as players to interpret intention in the future, because these are cards that can never go away. Oh, hold on, I'm gonna move the text just so it's a little out of the way there. Sorry for hiding the chat. So because there are cards that are coming in that are now not leaving the game, as players, I think we can read into that a bit, right? So first off, big note, cards can be changed before rotation is implemented. These are, please take this with a grain of salt, because, hey, there is a chance that any of these cards could have their text changed prior to this Evergreen rotation happening. So, big asterisk there. So, this interpretation that we can do can include the types of cards that include it, the text of cards, so specific keywords, styles of gameplay, mechanics, etc., right? Because, again, these are cards that will not leave the game in the future ever again, right? These are things that are going to be here for the long haul. An interesting note is that, so going from 170 Evergreen cards to 400 Evergreen cards, if you were to just like create a ratio between those, it's like, okay, it's basically 2.5 times the size, right? Which, hey, we got 2 elites before, so we should have like 5 elites now, right? Interestingly, that's not actually what they're doing. There's a significantly higher percentage of Evergreen elites that are coming through the pipeline. So we're getting 11 elites, per nation, rather than 5. So we're getting more than twice as many elites based on the previous ratio of Evergreen elites, which I think is really interesting. And the other note here that I think is interesting is that even the most recent expansions have cards that have been included in the Evergreen lists. So the easiest example here is that the playset of the cards that are the, hey, you deploy this and then you get one of 3 specific cards that you can add to your hand. So things like 41st Infantry, like that, give you the option of what Unity is Strength, Death from Above, and whatever the other one is. I always draw a blank. So those like specific playset cards, those are from the most recent expansion, but those have been included in the Evergreen set, which I think is really interesting because it shows that it's not limited to cards that are currently like out of rotation. So first off, the thing that's coming in that I wanted to cover just briefly was the playset elites. So all of the generals are staying in Evergreen. So Zhukov, Monty, Heinz, Yamamoto, and Patton are coming in for each of their nations. They're introducing Soviet military research and imperial research to Soviets in Japan. I have to assume that those are going to become Evergreen because all of the rest of the research cards are also being Evergreen. So I assume that the whole research playset is becoming Evergreen. The other thing that's coming back is the 0-4 1-cost infantry. They all have like pretty darn powerful effects. I feel like I just came in as these were getting rotated out, so I didn't have a chance to play with many of these, but I know there's a lot of like old school players who look at those and is like, oh, like these are really powerful cards and are bangers basically across the board, right? So I think these are real interesting that it makes a lot of sense for 1939 to have play sets coming in because these sort of playset cards also can help act as flavor for nations, where you can, as a new player, compare these and contrast, like, hey, these are the same style of card for each nation, but each one does something that's different, that's kind of specialized to that particular nation, which gives you an idea about how that nation might be meant to play. I think the generals are like the best example of this, right? Because it's very like, hey, these are very targeted for towards like what they do. Um, so moving on to each individual nation and sort of looking through the list that they have and like just internal thoughts about what it means for these particular nations. And I pulled out all of the elites just to have them here if they weren't that are outside of the ones that are already in the game. So the pick one of three elites and the playset elites. So like the generals and those 0-4 infantry and the research cards. Like these are the unique elites that are not part of like a playset, right? So interestingly, so UK I think was one of the ones where again they have already the least amount of representation in sort of the evergreen set format, just because so much of their decks were focused on buffs. I'm not really sure how they would look like now if we did another expansion tournament. But in my mind, the UK actually has a significant amount of area of effect cards, like board wipe cards, right? Like I think of things like Wave After Wave. They have Carpet Bombing. They have what is it, Blockade, the one that gets stronger with a naval card on top. They have Forward Observers. Like I think of the UK as like, hey, you have a lot of options to do damage to the board. Interestingly, the Evergreen set only has one, and it's only Carpet Bombing. So clearly, like my understanding of like, oh, this is like one of the things that makes the UK a nation is actually not there in the Evergreen set, which I thought was interesting and something to highlight. The UK Evergreen set goes super hard into air. There are 17 planes or orders that target planes. So things like Finest Hour and whatever the British order is that gives a +1/+1 to a plane and like its neighbors. So considering these Evergreen sets are like 60-ish cards, having 17 of them be plane focused is like a significant percentage, right? So very clearly air power is like, this is one of Britain's like evergreen things. Like they will be a plane nation. They're also really focused on delaying. They have a significant percentage of their cards that have pin on them. Yeah, I do even have, yeah, I know Brit Air is the thing that I associate Bear with. Um, but it's just interesting to see that from compare and contrast where, I mean, I think where people's minds go to for like what Britain is and has been, is not air, right? So it's interesting to have that like dichotomy. So, delaying, so lots of cards with pin, which I think is interesting. And I think they're one of the few nations that has pin at all, let alone that many things. So this is clearly something that it's like, okay, this seems like a flavor thing where you want UK to be the nation that is sort of the delaying and kind of messing with your opponent. I'm a little surprised that something like MI5 I don't think was on here. I would have to double check. Maybe I'm wrong there. But like Ultra, for example, is. Ultra, by the way, probably the only countermeasure that I like that has been included in the Evergreen set, and I'll talk about that a bit later. Commandos, interestingly, is going to stick around and be part of Evergreen. So that's always kind of going to be sitting there. I know it's been significantly reduced in power from its heyday, but it's there, right? I would say that generally the British elites pass that check for deck inclusion in the sense that, hey, you can kind of throw these into sort of any deck, because you look at them and it's like, okay, dealing 5 damage to an enemy tank, dealing 3 damage to an enemy unit, damaging the HQ makes the enemy's hand cost more. Like, these are cards that you don't really necessarily need to like build a deck around, but I will say that they do generally seem underpowered. There's a lot of cards that I feel like, I mean, again, maybe it's just because it's been so wildly skewed from the British decks that have existed, but I'm surprised that something like AVRE, for example, was not an evergreen card, because it is both a powerful elite. It's not something you need to build a deck around, but it also does tend, like, it leans in that direction of, hey, if you want to introduce like delaying as a like feature of Britain, having a card that just says, hey, your opponent's cards all retreat is like crazy effective at communicating that from a flavor perspective. Okay, Germany, I don't know why, but they have one extra card for some reason. So I just thought it was worth pointing out. I don't know why, but looking at the page, like I think everyone else I think is getting 64, where it's like they have 16 rows of 4 cards each, and Germany has like one extra card on its own row, which was just kind of funny. Um, Weirdly, Alpine is still a keyword. There's several German Alpine cards that are going to be part of the Evergreen set. I thought that was interesting because there's been a big focus on rotating Alpine out of the game, and there hasn't been much Alpine cards introduced in any sort of recent set releases. So the fact, again, going back to sort of interpreting intentions, right? If Alpine was something that needed to, or the 1939 wanted to leave, they would not include it in an Evergreen set. The only thing I can take away from this and interpret this as hey, we probably will continue to get Alpine cards in future set releases. Whether or not it'll ever be any good is a different story, but at least it means that like this keyword is still going to exist in the game and be something that gets focused on in the future. 1939 seemingly can't quit countermeasures. Germany has 4, so it's like, hey, that's a significant amount of their card pool, right? Like when you talk about like, okay, if you're getting 64 in the Evergreen set and 4 of them are countermeasures, including one of your elites, like at least From the Deep is like playable, I guess, but it's frustrating to me that this is a card that I feel like is just not. I feel like it's not great from a gameplay perspective, in the sense that it punishes new players pretty badly just because they might not know they exist. But then you play like at any sort of competitive level, they're not very included, so they're just in a weird spot. The fact that they're in here and are going to be around forever is like, I guess it's fine, but it's kind of frustrating to me. The other part that is interesting here is that it is something that I feel like by introducing countermeasures and making them so that there are some who are always in the Evergreen set, it seems a little like you are sort of restricting your options in the future, because if you have multiple countermeasures at the same mana cost, that seems like you are introducing headaches for players where like, oh, I'm trying to play around this countermeasure, like it's just kind of frustrating. Anyone who's played Hearthstone during like the oh god, way back in the day, the Mysterious Challenger like decks where it's like, okay, there's like 4 secrets in play, so like let me go through the mental checklist of like which ones do I want to try to trigger first if they have that. It's like, god, it's annoying. I still don't think it's good, but it's just frustrating. And I feel like you're introducing the possibility for that to happen by having so many potentially be part of the card pool forever. The next next bullet point was Germany got some chunky elites, man. Like you look at theirs, and again, ignore From the Deep because it's countermeasure. Jagd Bomber is the only elite that they have that's under a freaking 9-cost card. Like they just went through and they clicked all the high end stuff, man. I thought that was funny and good to highlight because you look at some of the British ones and it's like there's a decent smattering, right? Like you have some high end stuff with like Rule Britannia and Lancaster, but also some low end stuff. Germany is just like, all right, let's slap a 9-cost, a 12-cost, and 2 10-costs in there. All right, got their elite pool done. Like they just clicked the big ones, which I think is hilarious. Whether or not it's any good, I mean, some of these obviously, like Leopold and Bismarck, see a lot of play. Jagd Bomber is pretty frequently seen. King Tiger is kind of oddly specific. I don't feel like that. I mean, I think that one's maybe included as like a flavor thing where people just like the big chunky German tanks, just from like a World War II nerd perspective. But like there are some cards that have seen competitive play in here. I just think it's funny that it's like so heavily weighted towards big boys. Soviets, interestingly, light infantry, again, kind of going back to the thing with Alpine where I thought that was being rotated like out of the game entirely. Light infantry becomes evergreen. So there's 4 cards to support it, which granted is not that many. So I think you would need to have some like stuff in the sets actually to continue to support it. Um, but it'll always be around, right? So it probably would not take that many cards in a set release for light infantry to become a deck that's playable all of a sudden. Um, Interestingly, and I thought this one was weird to me, is that there seems to be pretty limited support for Soviet soup decks. Um, because that seemed to be like the whole like, oh, multiple combat keywords, like that's the thing that we want to focus on. It seems like maybe that was just the focus for Homefront, and that isn't going to be an evergreen focus. There's only a couple cards, and one of them is here, the armored train, that have multiple combat keywords on them. I think the other one is the KV 1939, the what is it, guard and heavy armor. I think those are the only two, if I remember correctly. Oh, and I guess Cossacks. Sure, Cossacks has two combat keywords, so there's three cards. But two of them are elites, and two of them are elites, and one of them is a special. There are no common or uncommon Soviet soup like multiple combat keywords cards, which I thought was really interesting. Not that I wanted to see the, I guess maybe Silesia would be okay since it's a support card for soup decks, but I definitely didn't want to see the. Oh my god, why am I drawing on the blank? The like 3-cost 4/4 has every keyword in existence on it. Card for Soviets. It has been pushed out of my memory. Kirkenes, thank you. Um, Interestingly, the Soviet nation has the fewest orders by like a not insignificant amount. I believe, if I counted correctly, they have 19 in their 64 card pool. Um, and weirdly, the Petliakov P2FT, which is the I think it's the players can only is it players can only play one order on their turn. Hold on, let me double check. Um, Here, let's cards news. Getting out of so the permit card pool list. Okay, scrolling down, letting things load. Yeah, this one. So if you'll notice, like let's look at Germany for example. So the first like 4, 5, 6 rows, these are all orders. It's orders, 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 and then we get into units, right? And that's true for every single nation except for weirdly the Soviet Union, where it's orders, 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 and then the PE2 is sitting up here in the orders pile, and I'm like, huh. So the takeaway is either this is a screw up, or is this card maybe going to become an order and be changed in some way, and it's in the orders pile? I don't really know what that would look like. But the deployment effects do not trigger is an interesting possibility. Like if this effect maybe becomes an order in some way, I don't know. But if this is just sticking in as a unit, and this is a mess up in the way of the ordering here, that does mean the Soviets only have 19 orders in their base card pool. It's like this is it. Every other nation I think the next lowest is 22. So like that's a significant difference, right? I think Britain has 26. So it's like, okay, there's a big gap between like these nations that, okay, you're very unit focused clearly, because like naturally your evergreen set just has more stuff in it that are units. Because even some of the Soviet orders are orders that summon units, like the light infantry or Red Banner, where you destroy your own unit to summon a unit. So like it's very, very unit focused for the Soviet ones. US, I think the most interesting one here is that duress is becoming evergreen. Suppression is not. So to me, that means A, 1939 wants suppress to be an evergreen option, but that they do not want suppression to be evergreen. So right now, if you were to make decks that were evergreen only, there are only two ways to get suppression, and it's including US for duress or including Finland, because Finland is keeping White Death. I believe those are the only two options for suppress in the evergreen format. And this is going to be really interesting, because if you start releasing sets where, hey, like, obviously there's a lot of like text on cards. Having text on cards is good, and it's very powerful to have cards with impact and destruction effects and things like that, like ongoing things, and you want to have the ability to suppress, unless you introduce more suppression effects, like it's gonna potentially limit to being like, okay, well, you need to splash US or splash Finland if suppress becomes super critical, or new sets will need to have options for suppression in them, right? Which I think is just an interesting thing to have as a potential like building component, right? Um, but yeah, just something I wanted to highlight because I thought that was really interesting. Frustratingly, the US also has countermeasures, including one of their elites as a countermeasure, which air defense is fine. It's a fine card, but it's frustrating that it's like there are a whole bunch of US elites I feel like you could have, included. Um, Especially since the ones that are in here, I'm kind of like I'm a little about in a lot of cases. Like I think uh Pershing is okay. I think Seaboard Invasion even post buff is kind of like it's fine. um I'm actually I think it's interesting that Super Fortress was included because I think that one a little bit breaks the concept of, hey, let's have elites that are sort of like that can be included in any sort of deck, because in order to even play Super Fortress, you have to be playing a deck that takes the front line. Or have a deck that's focused on ramping to be able to like play it for its heavy cost. And especially if you want to attack with it, you absolutely need to have ramp, because even if you control the front line, then you also want to use blitz. It's like you better have 16 credits. Or excuse me, yeah, 15 credits because it's or nope 16. God, my math is bad. Holy shit, it's been a long week. Because it's 3 less to deploy, so it'd be 12 to deploy, 4 to attack. So yeah, it's that one is, I think, out of the list. Like the rest of the elites are something where it's like these do not really need to have build around effects in order to see play. I mean, obviously, like the German ones, it's like, hey, these are a lot of high end cards, so that kind of points you in a direction that you might want to build a deck. But there's nothing that it's like, oh, you need to build your deck in a specific way to even like use the card. And I think Super Fortress is the only one that sort of like breaks that mold a little bit, which is interesting. There is, looking through the US list, it's interesting that there's some support for a number of decks, but in my opinion, not enough to exist within the Evergreen unit pool alone. So the two examples here were Throp, where they like Le Tarib, the one where, hey, you play a 3-op card and it draws you a card. Absolutely a must-have for a Throp deck to work, right? Because that gives you the ability to continue to cycle your hand and play things. But that's kind of the only supporting card for that list, and the rest of them are like there are, I think, 5 or 6 other like 3-op cards, but not the ones that are the one that like whatever the airborne was, that's like the cheap shock one that then becomes a 0 cost once it loses shock or whatever. Like the ones that really fit into Throp, it's like you have just kind of like big like Pershing and Super Fortress and stuff like that, where it's like these are just big cards, right? Like they just happen to have high op costs because they're big, not because like, hey, you're specifically building a Throp deck. But that does mean that it's like there is some support that's just naturally there for it in the Evergreen card pool. It's just not enough to have it be its own deck out of Evergreen alone, right? There's also unit healing as a potential like deck in the Evergreen card pool, but again, not quite enough to just naturally have it be a like thing that just can be formed from Evergreen cards alone. So there's a lot of potential for opportunity for cards in sets coming in and making these US decks suddenly like cool, great, out of nowhere. Like we get the whatever the Anzac expansion is called, I forget what it's called. If that comes in and it's got a couple good Throp cards in it, I think we'd see that suddenly bubble up to being like, okay, this is like a B tier deck all of a sudden without that much more inclusion of stuff, right? Which I think is super interesting. Japan. So Japan certainly has a focus on destruction effects. There are a good number of them. Oceania, blah, I can't say that. Oceania Storm. I'm just gonna call it the Anzac expansion. Honestly, that's that's the way I'm gonna remember it. The destruction support is pretty limited to straightforward burn. So it's a lot of the cards that are destruction deal 2 to your enemy HQ, destruction deal 2 to an enemy thing, right? I think that's super interesting because despite including 114th, which is the natural, like, hey, this is the destruction elite card, right? And there are the other sort of destruction payoffs where it's like, okay, when you trigger destruction, deal 1 to the HQ. When you trigger destruction, this card gets +1/+1. Despite those cards being in here, it's interesting that the destruction effects primarily are basically just burn or like pseudo burn, like the Kika being in the card pool. Kamikaze cards are basically burn, right? Like it's but deal 1 to the enemy HQ, draw a card, and cycle this. It's like, okay, that is basically still burn. I'm a little surprised that there isn't the card. God, I am out of the loop, and it's been a while since I've played with it. But like the destruction effect, the 4-cost 2/6 guard destruction, the enemy discards a card. It's like, hey, this allows you to potentially, like, just that alone being in there allows a destruction effect or a destruction deck to be built in a way that has different effects that are not just burn effects, right? But that's not there. So it seems like it's very, very focused out of the Evergreen pool on destruction effects are a thing. Japan likes destruction, but the destruction effects burn the enemy deck down, or burn the enemy HQ down. Interestingly, 15th Cav, which is currently the only aggro like 1-drop in the Evergreen set, is still the only aggro 1-drop in the Evergreen set. I thought it was interesting that none of the like classic like Japanese 1-drop 0-op tanks are going Evergreen. So there is no TK early. There's no whatever the one is that's the attack the enemy HQ and it gets +1 to its attack. So those are going to all rotate at some point, and 15th Cav will be the only like aggro 1-drop for like the classic Japan aggro list. I think that's super interesting because it shows that, hey, maybe 1939 is trying to back away from Japan hyper aggro being a thing. They don't want that to be a potential thing that you can build with a lot of power coming out of the Evergreen set alone. Interestingly, the other one that's included in Evergreen that is a package that I was a little surprised at was the cannot attack enemy HQ package. So things like Frank, the cheap bomber with Blitz that's like a 2/1 for 2, that have can't attack the HQ on them, and then is it Nobu that basically says ignore can't attack the enemy HQ text. The fact that that's an Evergreen set is like I'm a little surprised at, because those are very specific as sort of a self-contained package, unless you're going to introduce a lot other can't attack enemy HQ in future sets. Or you leave them in there as a package, but it's like there doesn't seem to be enough cards to really make that work in Evergreen alone, so it seems like potentially wasted card pool space. I just thought it was interesting that got included at all, really. Minors. So minor nations. This one is, I think, one of the bigger ones. So Resistance is going to be around for the long haul. This one I'm kind of surprised at because of how like frustrating it can be to play against Resistance. I expected that Resistance cards would generally be things where it's like, we're going to potentially rotate these in, rotate these out. We maybe don't want this to be like France as a nation. That's clearly not the case. So, I mean, some of them will be rotating, but some of them, and like the ones that honestly, like oh boy, scrolling down through the list, the Liberation is the one that sees the most play right now, and that's around now permanently. And the fact that both that and Call of the Colonies are in is just like, okay, cool. Like, if you are trying to build that sort of like extremely health gain, sort of frustrate your opponent, play the long game, like these are auto includes, man. And like that is a lot of HQ gain to just naturally always be available for you in an evergreen set. That seems kind of nuts to me because it's like, hey, you include these full play set of these cards, and it's like you're looking at what 36 health gain across those, assuming you call to the colonies for +8 every time. Like that is a boatload. So it's interesting to me that those made the cut here for cards that are always going to be available for people all the time. The other one that I thought was interesting was Maginot. That this is something that's brand new. Like this is early war that just dropped, and now that's being included in the card set for France forever. The ability to say, hey, this can't retreat, this can't be suppressed, is super powerful. And the fact that you're making that a card that will always exist going forward, I think this is something where it's like, this seems like an underrated card right now, and is something that is potentially like game warping in the future. Like, I could see something like what we saw with Group Breton and the German Call to the Front, where it was like, Group Baton was there and never saw play, but then suddenly this other card dropped that made it just an absolute banger and like game ruining. I could see that happening with Maginot, where it's like, hey, you drop a card that is powerful enough that the enemy has to do something about it, and then you've now got a card that's in here that's Maginot that just says they can't. We've removed their options to potentially do something about it. Like they have to destroy it. I think that's potentially dangerous. And it's really interesting that that's making it into the permanent set here. Italy, again, Alpine still. Like, minor nations do not have that many cards in the permanent pool. Like, you look at this and it's like, okay, we're talking 16, 17 cards in a permanent pool, and Italy is having 2 of those be Alpine? Like, damn, I'm hoping that 1939 is introducing Alpine stuff. Otherwise, it's like, I feel like you're kind of kneecapping, like, the card pool here for a minor nation, right? So I'd hope that there's some more Alpine stuff coming in. Interestingly, all of the good Italian air units are staying in except for the Baby Maki, the gets +1/+1 for other air units. So it's like, Italy seems like a banger for like any sort of, hey, you want some air in a deck? Like, you've got the Blitz Maki that's always available to you. You've got the life gain. You've got the early Fiat drop. Like, that's some powerful stuff to always have around, right? I know it's a meme at this point, but I feel like Poland kind of got screwed. I know it's a joke, but like, I'm not joking. I am shocked that it's like, okay, Tarnow needed to be in the permanent card pool for Poland. It's like the only thing they have that's like a power card drop, right? Like Tarnow and I'm not gonna force myself to try and remember what it is. Danuta. Like, those are the 2 like powerful like Polish cards that we'll see play. But I mean, look at the options that they've included with Tarnow for Intel. It's like, you've got Underground State, which didn't see play. Plan West, arguably, to get more Legions cards to potentially buff, but like, it itself is not an Intel card. And you've got Orzel. You've got Tarnow in here with no freaking support for it, man. Like, I'll be honest, I expected when they were announcing Evergreen, my assumption was there's going to be a bunch of crap for Poland that doesn't see play, but at least it'll have Tarnow and Stretch the Line, and those would be enough that if there is a valuable Intel deck in the future, like, Poland could be included. But Stretch the Line's not here. That's like the second, like, that one's, you know, right below these 2 is like the optimal like Intel and Legions card, right? So yeah, my mind is blown at this, because it's like, okay, you've included Tarnow, but like, it alone, unlike, you look at Italy and it's like, hey, Italy alone, like, you could include Italy as a minor nation just from their Evergreen pool. Attacking the Colonies is a banger. You have these 3 air, those are bangers. La Decima, the Lispanza, I mean, even Spirit of Rome, like, if you're building a deck around it, like, is a banger. Like, but for Poland to have your one, like, very, very strong card, but it must have support. Not have enough support in the evergreen pool is like, dude, it's frustrating. The other thing that is just, I'm gonna rant about for a second here is I hate, and I think I had it in the bullet list here. I hate exile cards in Evergreen. Poland has 17 cards, and look, and there's five of them that are exiles, where it's like, dude, like, more than anything else, this is something that is just super frustrating to me, where it's like, I already was not a fan of exile as a keyword, just period, right? Like, I think that minor nations get so few cards. Like, look at the latest expansion, where it's like the Polish exile card that's like copy combat keywords, and it's just like, this basically isn't a Polish card. It's basically another Soviet card, but like, even then it's not good. Um, I wish that. Okay, let me try and center myself so I can explain. This worries me because it means exile is going to be in the game in an evergreen format, which means they'll introduce more exile cards in the future, and I have to assume that Poland is going to continue to get exile cards, which means in the future again they will continue to get cards which only fit specific nations and maybe don't even fit Poland, which just weakens their card pool naturally. The second one is their evergreen card pool, again, as a minor nation, is only 17 cards, so the fact that 6 of them are exile cards, or 5 of them, sorry, I'm getting that wrong. The fact that 5 of them are exile is just frustrating. I don't know. I don't know, man. I just don't know what the plan is with these guys. I mean, maybe Anzac will have exile cards. It's a possibility, and that it will no longer be a Poland specific thing, and it'll get spread out some more. Or sorry, I know it's not a Poland specific thing, but it's funny when, because I think, was it France has exile cards as well, but you'll notice none of those are in their card pool, because France has cards in their card pool that don't require exile on them, and Poland is like, well, I guess they get exile. Oh no, they do have 6, because Orzel is a exile card. Sorry, I was just looking at the ones down here. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I feel like Poland again, kind of getting the short end of the stick. Finland, I think, is the most like, has always seemed to me like one of the most self-contained like minor nations, where it's like their cards are just good, and like a way where you can kind of like include them just because they're strong. Um, so they've got sissy support. They've frustratingly also got countermeasures. They have White Death, which again is going to be one of the few ways to do bulk suppress, or it's the only way to do bulk suppress, period. But it's one of the few ways to do suppression in the Evergreen format. And there's weirdly more support for soup in the Finnish minor card pool list than in the Soviet Evergreen list. Because you look at the Finnish cards, and it's like, you've got a lot of orders first off, but then Ambush Guard, Blitz Shock. Like, you've got 3 pretty good bangers for a soup deck just automatically in here, which I thought was super interesting. But a lot of them are like, I mean, Finnish cards, no one's going to say that they're like undervalued for what they do. I mean, they might not fit competitive decks, but I feel like they are almost consistently across the board like, hey, these are pretty darn good for their cost to play. They are frustrating to deal with. They provide value in ways that are like always strong. Because even Sturmy, I mean, honestly, what's the weakest thing here? From a unit perspective, maybe Pack 36, but even that can be kind of frustrating to play against sometimes. So yeah, I think Finland's list looks pretty solid. I'm a little surprised that Molotov made it into the list, just because there was a. It seemed like there was 1939 attempting to avoid discard in general, in the Evergreen set, which I totally understand. From the perspective of a new player, it's like having your cards out of your hand get discarded is like a special kind of frustrating. So to have that be an evergreen thing is a little bit of a surprise, but at least it's a minor nation. And maybe that's something where, 1939 is comfortable giving that functionality to a minor nation versus a major nation. Um, but yeah, so those were my thoughts on the evergreen format. I'm really interested to see what this looks like going forward. Um, and again, obviously the gigantic asterisk of like these cards are up for change. Like this is not a set in stone thing, so they may have balance changes before evergreen comes out. Um, yeah. Okay. Well, with that in mind, let me launch. Let's do a little bit of queuing here. Um, do, do, do. Update the title here. Do some laddering. Oh man, you can tell it's been a while since I've played. Have absolutely no nothing on the crate. Did hit FM last month, but I don't think I'll be doing it this month. Have a lot of work and travel that I'll be doing, so probably not gonna be taking it super competitively. All right, claim the randos, and okay. Oh, I guess I did queue until I hit 5. How about, can we do a Iron Proven deck? I don't know, what sounds fun? Germany? Let me update the explanation. Laddering with Iron Proven decks. Alright, see you, Bear. Have a good one. Whoa, come on. Okay, update that. Alright, what do we have here? We have like an Italian Navy burn list. Air, Roma, FW190, Schutzen, Salamander, Jagdturpitz, again, Bismarck. Cool. All right, let's queue it. All right, close that down. Double check. So, apologize if I am rusty. Again, have not played basically anything for a while here. All right, playing Germany. Probably don't want 2 buzz bombs. Let's toss one back. Buzz bomb face and. Okay, so we don't have any of the 1-drop planes, so Baby Maki comes down very small. I think we could just pass, hold it for now. They clearly are not being very aggressive, so they maybe don't. Okay, well, drawing some high end. We can shoot some on an empty board. We can attack in the colonies something if they play something down. Research. Okay. Guess we can shoot in an empty board. I feel like we're losing blitz on that if we do that. Maybe colonies face. We can shoots and push it. Okay, they're shooting on an empty board. Cool. In that case, let's go ahead and FW. We can suppress that, and then we can Baby Machi. Second FW Baby Machi. If they push that, we can trade. Okay, they're routing. fine. Crossfire on top. So we can hit, shoots, and hit. Which I think I will do. Hit, shoots, and hit. We can Kriegsmarine to do some pretty chunky burn if they don't get stuff out of their hand here. Okay, that draws. Second route, okay. Wolf Pack. Okay. Oh, that's a good discard. Dang, getting rid of Bismarck. Okay, so their burn plan is definitely slowed down a bit by that. Alright, so they're running a lot of discard stuff. I think we push, pass. We can... Basically, we're looking to trade an Arado. Are they going to go for synthetic? Yeah, they're going for synthetic. Okay, we can Arado for the draw now. We're actually just real close to lethal here. Yeah, let's attack on the colonies. We'll suppress for the draw, just to see if we can draw into something as potential lethal. Yeah. Okay, so if they're also playing this sort of burn list, they would need to do 30 to us, which seems unlikely, even with 19 credits. And I don't think that's going to do it. And then Roma is lethal. I don't think that they would necessarily have a way unless they're also potentially running Italy. Like if they have their own attack in the colonies. Oh, they're Britain. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, unless they have fortification then. Okay. Roma for lethal. Oh no, not National Fire Service. That's sad. Okay, well, we can trade here. Slap that down. I mean, they'll do 13 to my face. So they might have lethal. If they... Shoot, shoot. Hit there. Play that. Okay. Is that gonna trade? Yeah, shoot. Well, GG. All right, National Fire Service being played. That's good to know. Queue up one more. We'll probably have to drop off soon. I think I've got a couple of folks I've got to respond to here. Let's see. Alright, so we like FW. Do we want to keep attacking the colony? I don't know what Japan lists are being played. If they're more aggro focused, maybe I keep attacking the colonies for the health gain. Toss back these two, maybe? Do I keep suppression? Okay. Okay. I think we can FW on 1 to prep for Maki on 2. If they're playing a more Japan aggro list, yeah, okay. So we can Maki on 2, that's fine. That does trade comfortably. Man, I really can't believe this card used to be a 1/3. Whew, that's spicy. Sullivan's. I'll be honest, I did not expect Sullivan's. Sullivan's is interesting. Let's hit him with a draw. play that guy? Do we play second 189? Might as well. If we draw something like Roma, we spawn a lot of credits. Something that I'm not sure on this deck that I feel like I'm kind of missing. Desperate Measures. Okay, that's an early Desperate. We can draw Focke-Wulf. I assume that they're going to have units to play, and that's fine. I need to look at this deck list to see what draw we have, because right now it seems like a Rado and Suppression. Okay. Next turn we can attack. If he has second Calliope and it rolls well, like, that will kill my Focke-Wulf. Okay, or that kills my Focke-Wulf. We can bounce that to hand, I guess. Slow him down. Gives him the replay on it, but gets rid of the Sullivans. I wonder, are we running Enigma? Really should have looked at the list here a bit closer. And check it after the game ends. I feel like this is the second game in a row where I've gotten down to the point where I've got nothing in hand and the enemy has a full hand. Okay, they push. We can take the trade. I think we probably want to do that. It's not great, but he would have been able to clear for free, which is frustrating. Yorktown. Okay. Interesting. Okay, we can... Don't have a great suppression target for this. But I would like the draw, and I think this gets cleared otherwise. Let's suppress the guard. Okay. Are there one drops that... yeah, I mean, if he drops something like 15th Cav, that's a full clear. If he has another one of the tanks, that's potentially full clear. I guess he hasn't played any of the 1 health tanks. Calliope, okay. Maybe double trade into the Focke-Wulf? Or is he just going to go face? I don't have any great options. Double trade in the Focke-Wulf, okay. If I throw that down, it just gets Calliope'd. So I think we just hold out. What are we looking for here? I'm really not sure. I feel like the burn has not really happened in the way that I would have liked it to. Schutzen would be good. It can help clear the board. It's hard for him to deal with, potentially. Trying to think of what else I've seen in the deck so far. Push, yep. He's thinking about it. Sullivan's. Okay, Sullivan's on that. Does make it impossible for me to now do a board clear. I think we Focke-Wulf suppress that. Might as well Kriegsmarine for the discard and the burn. This does get cleared. I assume he does it with the Calliope, which means he's still not crossfireable. If he clears with anything else, then Crossfire can come down. But that would be a huge mistake.
Yeah, should be Calliope Focke-Wulf and then full attack face, which would give him, what, three credits to play with? He's thinking. Another Sullivan's on the Calliope. Oh my god. But he sends that face, but unfortunately it's now at 4 health, not 3 health, so I can't crossfire it. Well, if I wasn't basically dead on board, that's very funny. I think we have to take that trade and crossfire, otherwise we're dead on board. Leaves that at 1. Technically, we have another crossfire. And okay. And that had been solvenced. Okay, what is our deck looking like? Let's go in here and take a look. What do we have? We have Buzz Bombs. We have Suppress. We have Errado. Those are all cycles, potentially. We do have double Enigma. I just have not drawn it. Okay, I will chalk that one up to just bad luck. I mean, we were halfway through the deck, and, like, basically it would have been a full hand refill, right? Like, we would have had, what, pay 4, draw 6. So, I don't know if it would have made too much of a difference, but, like, there were several turns in there where Enigma would have been very much worthwhile. Same thing with the previous game, because I feel like I was in a similar boat where, I mean, both times now I've been on basically a turn where I've had no cards in hand, Kriegsmarine their hand for 7. So if I had Enigma for either of those for the hand refill, that would have been awesome. All right, we can toss that. Maybe we keep Crossfire. I don't think we keep Suppression. Keep Buzz Bomb. We Fiat on 1. Get it down with the bonus attack. And trigger the mute. We can, I mean, Buzz Bomb Fiat. Do we kill that? I think we Buzz Bomb this first, see what we draw. Okay. Just shoot that. Feel like we've got enough burn, and if they're playing a more aggro Japan list, they aren't going to have healing, so I think we just need to take out their stuff with units and let orders do the work. 15th Cav. Expansion. We could try and race. Let's Buzz Bomb face, see what we draw. I guess we just take the... I'm fine with Enigma in hand. I'm fine not getting the draw off the second Buzz Bomb because Enigma is going to act as the hand refill. Okay, pin's fine. I think we just roam a face. At this point, I think we can do a pretty good job of racing them. Schuetzen's another 3 damage. I assume they're going to take the trade for the Fiat with the tank. Otherwise, why would you have suppressed it? Or are you just going to push 5 to face? We can crossfire. Okay. Are you just going to do 6 to face? And leave the Fiat up? You are. Okay. I think we take the crossfire then. I feel like it does not get too much better than that. Next turn we can... Okay. Getting the hand refill, that's fine. We can Schuetzen that down. Get the burn. Second surprise attack. So they're just kind of acting as a delay. That's fine. I think we Schuetzen hit Fiat. I mean, we're we're kind of getting to the point where any of the big finishers can act as like a game ender potentially. 14 in hand, and we have fighters on the field, so they can't even an our face. Overpower. Okay, they could an our face now. Interesting. Well, when do I think they would have drawn off that? Okay, I think we hit. FW. Enigma. Draw 5. It's hard to argue against, man. You can FW again. Okay, next turn. Hipper to bounce gets us 2. So we'd have 5 credits post Hipper. Deals 2 to everything. Okay. We no longer have 5 credits post Hipper. We can FW suppress. So this would be 1, 2, 6, 7 push. I think we do that. Take front line, put him at 6. We're certainly threatening lethal here. So you'd have to have some way to clear this. Raiding Brigade kills FW, trades out. Okay. Push face. I assume. I mean, we're basically on the clock until we can play Bismarck. So I think it's Salamander to clear. Okay. Bakura. Okay, so Salamander to clear the 2-2. And then just double Machi and hope he can't do 9 from hand. If he has Anne, we have 2 fighters up, so he'd have to attack the fighter, so Anne only does 2, not 4. He has Sullivan's twice, right? So, worst case as a finisher. Is there anything that would be able to blitz face us? I don't know if there would be. It seems like he's trying to dig for options here to not die or have lethal. We can do it. Saves him for a turn. He trades out. Is this lethal? Yeah. That's brutal. Kriegsmarine on a full hand is gross. Alright, first one of the day. Alright, we could do one more. And then I will call it there. Do. Let's see, what have we seen so far? So we've had kind of a Japan aggro list. We've had a sort of Japan-US frontline thing with like Brewsters, which was interesting. Now we've got a British deck. I have no idea what to expect here now that I assume Buffs is kind of out. Does seem like Sullivan's is still seeing a lot of play basically across the board. Wow, okay. I will take every fiat you have, please. Play hit face, I assume. Start putting on pressure here. Hey there, Core. Monty for the pin. I mean, Guess we buzz bomb first, then we can fiat face, fiat for more fiat. Yo, dog, heard you like fiats. This is limited, right? This is the full playset? No, it is common. Okay. Forward obs. Okay, well, the punish. That's fair. That's fair. All right, we can FW now. Make him play a unit. Henschel. Okay. Interesting. I can hit face with it, but I haven't... God, this hand kind of blows for that. I can try and keep it alive with attacking the colonies. I think since we're burning, I think we just go face. Make him make the trade. If he has a way to clear, that's fine. This is still a 1 health thing that's now sticking around for Crossfire if he doesn't make the trade. Okay. Now I think we can attack in the colonies that hit face. He doesn't want to get rid of honey. He didn't have a way to do 1 damage last turn. Highlanders. Ooh. Okay, well, we've got silence. So we can Arado for draw. He doesn't take the trade. Interesting. Arado for draw. Suppress. Shoots and kill honey. For the burn. What would he have put on top? It's got to be beefy. Maybe it's something like wave. Could be... He hasn't done any sort of like research. He's playing Germany. Is there a big German order that might make sense? Okay, formidable. That's a chunky clear right there. Enigma for 0 for 1 card, huh? Oof, that can't feel good. Think we Arado, FW, Turpits for draw. And then we can, sorry, Turpits, production, Machi. I mean, and then we've got multiple ways of getting lethal, so he's in trouble unless there's like a fortification in his hand. Suppress, okay. Forward obs clears the board. Okay, still doesn't help with Roma in hand. Desert Dust pins his own guy, which creates guards, so he's trying to create blockers. Alright, well, we're basically at the point where you gotta have NFS or it doesn't work. Okay, that's that. Alright, so pretty defensive British deck. I'm not really sure what his payoff was in the end. That was pretty quick. One more. We'll go till 10:30 and then we can call it. Ugh. How are you doing, Core? Have you been doing any ladder, or have you been kind of taking a break? All right, Japan. So the last 2 Japan decks we played have been a pretty classic Japan aggro, and the one that was like the Japan US sort of mid-rangey like US stuff. I don't really want U16. I feel like maybe keep Crossfire. If they're more an aggro lists, like they'll have low HP cards. Too busy with work and family. Fair. I know how that goes. There's I was shocked I managed to hit FM last month. It was skin of my teeth. Basically was playing with the last like 6 hours to go. Okay. All right, second 15th cav. All right. So we can Fockel Fiat Fiat. We can Buzz Bomb Fiat. I think I like Buzz Bomb Fiat. Try to get rid of this damage in the front line. He's currently kind of winning the race here. If he is aggro. I don't anticipate our card draw being very good. Okay, we can trade that off pretty easily. What is the best way to do this? We need to hit that to clear that off. We need to hit that to... So that's 1-1. So we can't drop. So we hit here, which lets us play with Fiat with the buff. Then we can hit here and stop draw. Leaves this 15th cav there, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Okay, ping. Finish that off. That's surprise attack. We can FW Baby Maki. And that comes down as a 4-4. And then swing. How greedy am I gonna want to be here? I think we'd be greedy. I think we FW Baby Maki and we swing there. This is telegraphing that we are going to crossfire on the next turn. But I think I'm okay with that. Oh, that's the best feeling. I have a friend whose cat is like that, where it's like, you gotta take those moments of like, you know, you gotta earn those. Interesting. All right, so the crossfire now doesn't clear board, but I think it's still worth doing. Leaves that at 2. We can trade it off pretty easily. We can probably don't want to bounce it. We probably just want to get rid of it. Arado. Okay. Jasper. Okay. Infantry Reg. We've not been very good at getting the burn off, unfortunately. We don't really have anything that we want to bounce and get rid of. Oof. Do we just FW Roma? We're playing Roma. Do we hipper? We can hipper the Arado. He won't draw because he doesn't have clears. Guess we just do that. 1 less damage on the board. $77th. Okay. That's a Roma target. We Roma that. Coin FW. I think so. We know he's got a Rado, so he does have a unit he can play from in hand. Coin. You have lethal? Oh, Blitzkrieg. I didn't expect that. Okay, well, couldn't do anything about it. Jur Italy, Jagro, Brit Japan. I haven't seen any British Japan burn. The only Brit deck I played against was like very guards focused. I wasn't really sure what the payoff was supposed to be. But yeah, I've definitely seen uh, Germany, Italy, Jagro, and one that I think was running your list, kind of the like Japan US thing. Um, so anyway, well, I actually need to head out. So hope you have a good one, Core. And if anyone else is watching, hope everyone else is good too. Let me check to see if we've got anyone else streaming in the category, and I can do the smallest raid possible. Do we have anyone else in cards right now? Just in time as always. Yeah, you missed the discussion that I had earlier with. I mean, honestly, it was mostly just me and Bear talking about the rotation stuff and like what that means. Because I don't know, I think it's interesting how what sort of impact that'll have. It does look like the only other streamer is not in English, so I will not send people over there. So working on a video on the rotation as well. Okay, well, cool. I look forward to it. I mean, um, yeah, I agree. I guess I could let me tab over because I'm curious to get your take on it. Just I realize it's sort of recapping here, but I'd be curious to know what you think about what I had in here because there maybe I have some hot takes, but I don't. Uh, did you? What? What? Where's my? Okay, my view didn't change. Why did my view not change? What are you doing, game? Do I need to close you down? Like, what is happening here? Oh, that's the problem. Haha. There, we can close that. Get. Where is this? It's here. So, let's see what one of the main ones. I'm gonna start with the one that I think I ranted the hardest about was freaking Poland, dude. Their list, I swear. Like, I don't know if you've gotten to the point of like looking at all the minors yet, but like with only 17 cards for each minor nation, which is totally fine as far as like amount of cards for a minor nation goes, but for them to get Tarnow with basically like next to no intel support is bananas to me. I expected at a minimum Poland would get Tarnow and stretch the line to be like, hey, here's a decent enough intel evergreen package, but they didn't get stretch, which is a surprise. And I really hate having exile cards in evergreen. It's so maddening to me that 6 out of their 17 cards are cards that it's like you can play without even playing Poland. So that one boggles my mind. Resistance being an evergreen seems like a real hot take, and seems like that'll like leave room for a lot of frustration potentially. Um, what are some of the other ones that were surprising to me? Um, UK only having carpet bombing for AOE was a shock. I kind of think of Britain to have as having a lot of like board clear options, and they just don't in Evergreen, which is a surprise. Um, Alpine still being a thing is a surprise to me. Um, so I guess that's sticking around for the long haul. I hate that there's so many countermeasures in Evergreen, but maybe I'm just salty about that. Um, to be fair, Poland doesn't have enough good standalone cards. I know, but like they didn't even put in the good intel stuff. It's like I can understand why you wouldn't put in punish, right? Because random discard maybe isn't something that you want to encourage in an evergreen set, but they still have Molotov cocktail on Finland, so like that's clearly broken there. But like stretch the line to me is like the one intel card that's like you could basically just have that in Tarnow, and it's like, hey, this is okay. But the fact that that's not there is, I don't know, seems weird. Um, Soviet one, the Soviets had a card interestingly not in their Like maybe this was just a formatting problem. Bear didn't confirm nor deny, so who knows. But all of the nations, like the top like 16 to 24. Yes. Yeah, AVRE was the one that I specifically had called out as like a one that I'm surprised did not make the elite pile here, because like especially since it seems like there is a focus on like one of Britain's national identities being delaying. Like they have, you know, 1 out of 8 of their evergreen cards has pin on it. So like having an elite that is like the payoff of like, hey, this is the ultimate in delaying, like AVRE being in there is like, it's a pretty good standalone card. It can fit in most decks. It fits your national identity. Like that seemed like a pretty easy include. I could understand maybe they don't want there to be a bunch of like AoE effects in the game. So Wave maybe not making it, but AVRE was a shock to me that was not in there. But anyway, the Soviet one surprised me because like you look at every other list and it's like they've got like 20 to 24 orders that all come first, and then it's all units. And then the Soviets, weirdly, the PE2FT is just in here chilling in the orders pile for some reason. So the Soviets, assuming this is actually a unit and this is not somehow an order or being changed into an order, the Soviets only have 19 orders in the Evergreen pool, which is like a kind of weird number. So this makes me think that somehow this card is being changed to an order. US, I was surprised that Duress is being made evergreen, because it means that it's like, hey, suppress, suppression as an evergreen thing is kind of a reads to me like it's including stuff as tech cards in an evergreen format, which is a little weird. But does mean that it's like, hey, if you continue to print cards that are so good that they require suppression, you're going to see more and more potential inclusion of US as a minor nation just so you can splash Duress, which was already kind of happening with the latest tournament setting, where it was like, I feel like there were decks that were just kind of like, I'm running Brit US for basically Sullivan's and Duress to suppress other Brit US decks, which is kind of wild. And Japan, yeah, I'm surprised that the Can't Attack Enemy HQ package was evergreen. That was weird to me. Yes, yeah, Duress and White Death are the only evergreen suppress options, but that's what I'm saying is that it's like, I feel like including suppression in an evergreen format, or including suppress, sorry, I need to be specific, suppress as a keyword in the evergreen format needed to kind of be an all or nothing thing, where it's like, you either have multiple nations that have access to suppress, or you have nobody who has an evergreen access to suppress. What I'm worried about is that it's like, you've now introduced it in one major and one minor nation, where it's like, unless each set introduces suppress cards, those cards are now going to be like, hey, if you have stuff that is a game warping card that needs the tech include of suppress, you have to have US as a minor or Finland as a minor. Or I guess US as a major, it could be there as well. Glad that Desperate Measures didn't make it to Perma. Yeah, I could see that. There's definitely a lot of Japan elites that are like just pretty consistent bangers. I'm a little surprised that they included a lot of destruction cards for Japan, including the destruction elite, but then like didn't include some of the more fun destruction effects. They just kind of included the burn ones. So like they didn't include the 4-cost 2/6 enemy discards a card when this is destroyed. Because I feel like at least that would allow you to build destruction decks slightly differently than like, oh, destruction deal 2 to the enemy HQ. Oh, destruction deal 2 to an enemy something. Oh, destruction deal. It was just like, dude, like, yeah, and the Aichi didn't make it, which is another one where it's like, hey, this is a destruction effect that, I mean, in order for that to work, it even has to happen on the enemy turn, right? So it's like, this is a multiple way to play around, but is also something where it's like, this is a non-standard destruction effect. It's like the only ones that we have are the There's the one that's the guard that's destruction, draw a card, which it's like, okay, that's something, but it's very straightforward. And the one that's destruction end of your turn, in which case doubling it doesn't matter, right? You're like, great, you've ended your turn twice. So yeah. Um, Otherwise, any other hot takes? Um, I ranted a bit about how this was one of the two elites in the old Evergreen format, because I think this is bad as one of your two available elites. Um, why Cossacks is the only Soviet elite in the old Evergreen format boggles my mind. Like, what is the point of having a 3-cost 0-op Blitz smoke screen unit? Why? um, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, talk through all that kind of stuff, and anyway, I'm curious to see your video, um, on it. Um, yeah, I agree. There probably were better ways to do it. I mean, I definitely prefer it more than what they do now, which is just like it's a gamble as to what gets included and what doesn't. At least this is like something you can like plan for mostly. I realize there's still going to be like rotating stuff in off of the reserved list with each expansion, but it is still kind of, I don't know. There's a reason why every card game does this, right? Where it's like actually structured around a schedule of like sets are in for X amount of time for this amount of period, and then they rotate out after this many more sets have released. It's like cool, like I can plan for that. As well as, I mean, they can plan for it too. Like this just requires less effort to like figure out what cards you need to get rid of because you're introducing stuff in a new set that might break with certain power levels or whatever, right? Like this is just more straightforward from a game design perspective, more straightforward from a player perspective, and it does seem like it's something where it's like, hey, this is like more understandable for people who are coming from other card games because like this is just how rotation works. Anyway, a changing core set that all players get for free. That I agree with. Yeah, I do think having a list of cards that are just like, hey, you've joined the game, here you go, right? Like, even if you had to like still earn them over time, just so maybe you aren't bombarded with all 400 at the outset, and it's like, hey, I mean, they kind of do that now, where it's like, okay, you unlock cards with like level 12 when you get the new deck set. Yeah, tie it behind nation levels, exactly. It's like, oh, you've hit level 2 with US. Here, you've unlocked X, Y, and Z. You can now include these in your decks. Like, it is something where it's like, I feel like eventually you kind of have to get in that direction of like, okay, like here's just cards that everyone has access to, and you have access to them for free all the time, no matter what. Yeah. All right, I really do have to drop off. Thanks for hopping on and talking through. Yeah, I agree. I hope this is foundations for a transition to that because I think this is something where it's like as the game continues to go on. I mean, Hearthstone had to go through the same thing, right? Where it's just like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to do that when you're only a couple expansions in, but you have a game that's running for a decade plus. Like, you gotta figure out something else. All right. See you later, everybody. Have a good one. Have a good weekend.